Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for Gotham Season 1, Episode 5, Viper. And this episode, I was definitely very mixed with. I really enjoyed this episode. I definitely enjoyed it more than previous weeks. I definitely did. I thought that it was probably the second best episode of the season. But I wasn't very fond of the killer in this episode, because basically, let's talk about Gotham for a second. The thing that everyone loves about Gotham, the thing that's always been so unique about Gotham, I think the thing that's so interesting about it is that no one actually has superpowers on this show. None of any of the vigilantes have superpowers. It's all just vigilantes going on a mission to pay for revenge of some sort. That's all this is. So when you introduce a character who can give a character superpowers, it kind of ruins the whole aspect of the show that everyone likes, is that this could all very be real. You know, like, this could be any city. It could happen in any city at all, and, you know, that's what's so interesting about Gotham, in my opinion, is the way that it pretty much could be any city. But when you do that kind of villain, it kind of ruins the episode. However, I still really enjoy this episode despite that, and let's just get to it, because overall, I really enjoyed it, and let's talk about it. So we see Bruce, he's working on a large cork board assembling information, and he is in full-on finding, detective mode now. And Alfred asks him to take a walk, but he says he's busy. And Alfred asks what if all this is a waste of time, and he never discovers who killed his parents and never gets revenge. And Bruce says he doesn't want revenge, he just wants to understand how Gotham works, because he has no idea how Gotham works at this point. So he asks how Falcone and Maroni got such big shares in the Arkham deal, and why Wayne Enterprises didn't do something about this. So Alfred says as a hobby, this is better than tormenting himself, but not particularly healthy. So Bruce promises to take a walk later, and Maroni wants to rob Falcone's casino to mess with him. And he says Arkham is only the beginning, and tells Frankie they'll take over inch by inch. And Oswald polishes a glass nearby, listening in on the crime plans. So he's still listening and kind of spying on them. So then we get introduced to our main villain of the week, basically, which I'm still not a fan of, because while there's so much planning and so much plotting going on, we have to have a villain of the week, which I'm not exactly a fan of. I want one villain for the whole season, and I'd be fine with that. I'm just not a fan of them having this villain of the week all the time. It kind of ruins the episode for me. So, a busker plays guitar, displaying a sign that he needs money for drugs, and a man approaches and leaves a vial of green liquid in the guitar case, and it's labeled Breathe Me. He snaps the ample and inhales deeply. He gets intensely high, has a sort of stiff seizure, goes into a store, grabs a jug of milk, gulps it down, and the clerk says he has to pay for it. The guy calls him mortal and says not to vex him. And the clerk comes over with a baseball bat, but the guy grabs and snaps it, then comes after the man. Now, don't get me wrong, the killer in this episode is definitely very, very menacing. Probably the most menacing we've dealt with on the show so far. Definitely, he was very menacing. I just was not a fan of what he can do. So, Jim and Harvey, they're getting burgers from the stand while Kat hops onto a car nearby. She creeps closer, and Jim sees her sneak up and take a wallet from a guy. And he yells at her, and the pedestrian notices she's lifting his wallet and grabs for her. She kicks the guy and runs off. Jim tries to give chase, but a taxi blocks him, and the girl is gone. Completely. She's gone. So they then hear an alarm, and Harvey doesn't want to respond because it's lunchtime, but Jim insists, and Harvey reluctantly follows. They let the clerk out of hiding, and he sees it. And by the way, we don't see Kat for the rest of the episode. Once again, we don't see Kat for the rest of the episode. Whatever. Whatever. So, Harvey says they're homicide, not robbery, and are on a lunch break. But then the clerk tells him he stole the ATM all by himself and carried it out with his bare hands. Like, that's crazy. I mean, if that's absolutely crazy that someone could do that. You know, like, basically, we see that guy running down the street, carrying the cash machine on his back, grinning with glee, and he's just running, and, like, he's so happy about what he did. So meanwhile, Fish is chatting with Liza, who of course is that girl that she basically wants to kill Falcone and seduce him, basically. She tells her boss she's bored, and Fish asks if she wants excitement, then slaps her across the face. She makes Liza say that she's her secret weapon, and Fish tells her that she needs to learn the damn tune. You know, you can definitely see that even though Fish is very impressed by her, she is not going to be a motherly figure or a nice person at all. I mean, Fish is not a nice person. All she's going to do is she's going to basically just help her out with what she needs to do, and then she's going to basically lead her off on her own. So, you can definitely see that, you know, Fish isn't going to guide her or anything. She's basically going to let her do most of that herself. That's what she's going to do, in terms of, you know, what she's going to do to her. So, Fish tells her she has to earn that, you know, and she turns on the boombox, and the girl works on the difficult opera number. It's a very difficult opera number. It's like this really high-pitched opera number. You know, you don't know if she's going to be able to sing it, but, like, you don't know what she's going to do with it, so that was definitely very interesting. So then Harvey and Jim show Essen the video from the store, and they show her the drug vial they found in the guitar case. And Edward is working to ID the drug, and they tell her they're going to try and chase down the thief. And Falcone meets with Fish and others of his managers, including Niko, and he says they all got a share of Arkham, but Niko complains and Fish tells him to back off Falcone, and Niko gets misogynistic with her, and she pretty much calls his mom a whore, until Falcone puts a stop to it, and Falcone says they need each other and says they're family. And again, Falcone has no idea what he's in for. He has no idea that Fish pretty much wants to kill him. He has no idea about it. He thinks that they're working together. He does. So, Harvey and Jim roll up in a very shady neighborhood, and with a pick of their preparation, but most say no. And one streetwalker says it's Benny, who is a druggy guitar player. And Harvey says the guy came into an inheritance, and she asks if for $20, and they give her $10, and she tells him where to find him. They find him holed up with the ATM and reams of empty milk cartons. He tells her hold up with the ATM and reams, basically he tells her he needs more because he doesn't feel good. He asks them to find him, and he says the guy has a mangled ear. So they try to subdue him, but he throws them back both easily, and the guy lifts the ATM over his head, but then his drug-fueled powers fail him, and the thing crushes him. They go closer to look at him and wonder what the hell, and Jim says, God help us if that drug gets out. We see the pusher guy handling out vials of it all over the bad neighborhood, including to the pro, the guys paid for the tip. So Alfred then finds Bruce cooked out on the couch in a mess of files. He fusses at the boy and threatens to throw it all in the fire. And Alfred tells him that Wayne Enterprise is hosting a luncheon tomorrow and says he told them Bruce would go. And he says he wants to go and ask about Arkham and how the gangsters got shares of the project. And he asks if his parents did business that way, and Alfred says no, they didn't do business that way. So Bruce says it was a very clever camouflage with shell corporations, and he tells Alfred he can't throw any of it into the fire and says it's in order. And Bruce turns on the news and hears about Viper, and we basically find out what it is. It's a new drug that gives superpowers and causes a terrible death. And again, that's kind of a problem for me when you have the whole superpower thing, because that makes the show not believable anymore. You know, that just makes the show not believable, and that was a problem for me, definitely. I thought that was definitely, you know, an issue I had with it. So, criminals are running rampant. They haul in the hooker from the day before, who is crazed and violent, and Eddie tells the guys and Essen that Viper activates unused DNA, and it burns calcium as fuel, as fuel. So, and basically, he says that the bones crumble and then they suffocate and die, and Essen wonders who would put this on the street and says it kills you. I mean, it makes sense. Why would they just say, you know, it kills you? And Harvey says they're creating demand, and Essen asks who would buy it. They speculate on that, and Eddie says you need a top-tier lab to make this, and he says the only lab around that you could do is Wasnt, but Essen says it can't be them since they're owned by Wayne Enterprises. So the hooker throws something through Essen's window and then crumbles to an agonizing death before their eyes. And Edward says it's fascinating, and Maroni hassles Frankie about the casino robbery plans, but Oswald comes over to chat, and Frankie tells him to get lost, and Maroni says to speak. Oswald says he knows a janitor that can get them in, and tells them there are access tunnels, and Maroni asks for his name, and Oswald says everyone calls him Penguin. He doesn't like the name, but Maroni says it suits him. Are we really back to these Penguin references? Seriously, people. I understand he's giving me the Penguin. Like, we don't need to make these references again. Penguin says this isn't his first rodeo. He tells him he's Oswald Cobblepot. He can be a great asset to him. He thinks everything's going well at this point. You know, he thinks they're just joking around. He knows a lot about the Falcones when they tried to kill him. And Maroni ends up slamming his head on the table several times and says it's a funny biochemist. It's a funny story. And then Taylor Reese from Wellsend comes in and says they have nothing to do with Viper. She says they will see anyone who says otherwise, and Harvey says it sounds like they pushed her buttons, and they ask her if she has a worker with severely damaged ear. But she does have she has a photo fixed over of Stan Polotsky, and she says he used to work for them in the personal care products department and is a biochemist. And she says Stan was very frustrated. He wasn't or on more important projects, and he grew very disgruntled. And then there was an incident last year when he got into an argument with his manager and tried to cut his own ear off. Like, this guy's basically suicidal, we find out. So Jim says she knew it was him, and that's why she came to see them. And basically, you know, she says Stan could build his own lab to make it, but he can still come inspect theirs with a warrant. So Jim says they need to find this guy, and Harvey goes to issue an APB, and Frankie then shows up to the PD and tells Jim they have a mutual friend, and he needs to come with them now, and he says otherwise he'll send Oswald's head to Falcone in a bag, which will cause problems since he's supposed to be dead. So Jim gets into the car with Frankie's pals, and they put a bag over his head. So Jim sits at the table with Oswald and Maroni, and he asks Jim about the story, and Oswald told him and threatens to jam a lobster claw down Penguin's throat. And Jim tells the guys to slow down. Maroni says he'll get a turn to talk. He tells him just the same story that Penguin told him. And Jim asks what story. And Maroni says he better know the story so he knows it's true so no one has to die. And now you kind of have some threats for Jim. And I definitely really enjoy that. So Jim says that the Waynes were murdered and he caught the case. And Jim says he was a pawn in a conspiracy between the PD, Falcone, and the mayor to frame another guy. And he says he was ordered to kill Oswald by Falcone, but he let him live. And Maroni asks if any of them know Penguin is alive. And Jim says if they did, he'd be dead already. Because remember, everyone still thinks he's dead. That's why he's going under this alias. That's why he's, you know, basically pretending to be this guy named, you know, that guy that he's pretending to be. So basically, Maroni calls Delicious and tells Frankie to bring Penguin back to the table. And Maroni tells Jim he did a good job and kisses Penguin on the cheek. So Jim asks if he can go, and Maroni tells him yeah, but to keep it hush-hush. He tells Jim he'll call if he needs him, and he says you do that, and heads out. So Liza, meanwhile, is working with Fish. She's basically trying to say 4 words to just, I love you, baby. Those are the 4 words she's trying to say. But it's coming across too sexually, you know, she's kind of doing it like a seductive way, and she doesn't want her to do it that way. She wants her to say it more like you'd say it to a child. So she tells her to act like she caught her in a lie, and she used disappointment. And Fish coached her on all aspects of her looks and behavior. She literally says to her, now about your hair. And I was like, what are you going to ask her to do to her hair? Like, I was like, what's wrong with her hair? So Jim shows up at the PD, and Harvey asks where he was, but he says it was personal. Wilson sent him over some files on Polotsky, and Harvey asks if it was Barbara, and he says it was, kind of, and he offers help, but Jim says it's okay. And Jim finds a photo of Polotsky and another guy, and says it looks like a university professor, so they head out to Gotham University. And the professor tells him he knows Stan and says that his work outwells him, pushed him into dark corners. And Harvey says he made shampoo, but the man says he made chemical weapons and used for combat and says that they would give them strength to rip a man apart. And he says Viper was stage 1, but had kinks, and Venom was stage 2. Venom, what is this, Spider-Man now? So the guy says he tried to get Wells in to shut it down and then went to the Waynes to try and shut it down. And the professor has a vial of the drug there, and they figure out quickly he helped Pulaski plan the acts of terrorism. He says Stan is making a statement today that snaps open a vial, gets his super strength, throws them out his door, chokes Harvey, and Jim shoots him and demands to know where Stan is going. He says he's going to make Wayne Enterprise and Wells in pay. And the guy said before he died, altruism won't make up for what they've done. So Harvey asks what altruism is, because I don't know what altruism is either. And Jim basically says that it's charity. It's basically charity here. So he knows where he's going. Sure enough, we see the guy with a $55 gallon drum of Viper that he wheels into a charity benefit Wayne Enterprises is hosting. And this was a really awesome scene. I definitely really enjoyed this. We see a TV playing and saying nice things about the company. And Alfred points out that Mathis, however you pronounce her name, to Bruce, and says she worked with his father. So Stan is on the roof hooking the drug canister to the building's ventilation system. And Bruce goes to speak to Miss Mathis, and she says most of them are middle management, says the board doesn't show up for things like this. He asks why, and she says they're very busy, and he says he wants to talk to the board about serious irregulars in the Arkham Project. And she says that Wayne Enterprise won't do business with criminals, and he asks her to arrange a meeting with the board, and she says she'll try. So then we get a really awesome scene where I thought this was definitely really awesome. Stan pops up on the big screen, says he created Viper for Wells-in, a subsidiary of Wayne Enterprise. He starts the drug, heading for the AC system, as Jim and Harvey tell someone to evacuate the building. They head upstairs. Stan says since the demonstration on 3 people didn't work, he has to do something more extreme. So Alfred notices the AC charges, throws his jacket over Bruce's face, hauls him over quickly. Jim pulls a gun on Stan, who says he doesn't care if he kills him because he says his work here is done. And Jim shoots the tank of chemicals, sprays all over Stan. He tells him to go look at Warehouse 39, then jumps off the roof to his death. That kind of annoyed me because, that was very anticlimactic in my opinion. The way he just killed himself was extremely anticlimactic. You knew he was going to do it because you knew he was suicidal, but at the same time, it was very, very anticlimactic to me. I was not as big as a fan as I wish, as I could have been. So Jim slides the door open, heads inside. He hears a noise, but it's just Harvey. And Jim says there's nothing there, and Harvey says that's Gotham for you. A car pulls up, and it's Mathis. And she says there's nothing there for them to find, so they can leave them be for now until they get closer. And, that was definitely very interesting. I'm wondering what, Mathis is talking about exactly. So Bruce finds a photo of Mathis attached to a profile at Wells-in. And Alfred comes in to sit by him and help, and Bruce smiles tentatively at his helping presence. Because now he has a clue, basically. So Penguin, Frankie, and Maroni are sitting in the car waiting on the casino thieves to pull off the job, and Maroni asks if he's nervous and tells him if his boys don't make it, he won't either, but they run out with the loot, and it's a job well done. And Fish has Niko tied in her bed, and she's rubbing on him, and he says sometimes he thinks she doesn't like him, and she says they just have to keep up appearances so Falcone won't know they're working together, but he says he wants Falcone gone, says they need to strike soon. So Fish and Niko are working together, which I think is definitely very interesting, and I definitely like this sort of, betrayal. I think that definitely is really cool. The last scene of the episode is probably my favorite scene of the show so far. I love the last scene. I thought it was really awesome, and I loved it. So Falcone is feeding pigeons, and Liza comes by, wandering in a dress, this very nice white dress, humming a song she's playing on her iPod. And you can tell right away, okay, definitely she's going to start the plan here. So he comes over and comments on the aria she was humming. She says it's her favorite, and she says his mother sang them when he was a child. And he says she looks like her. He apologized for rambling. She says it's okay, then asks if he wants to listen. He agrees. They sit on the steps. She pops an earbud into his ear and the other in hers. Fish's plan is basically off to a lovely start, and that's how the episode ends. So overall, guys, I was very mixed with this episode. I was not a huge fan of the killer in this episode because he just basically killed himself and was a coward. I wasn't a big fan of that. I do like this central conflict now that we do have it going on with Jim. Jim eventually is going to have to tell Harvey, hey, I didn't kill Oswald. He's going to have to tell him that eventually. I don't know where that's going, but I definitely feel we're heading towards a path where he's going to eventually tell him, definitely. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen there as well. Also, does Maroni and Frankie really want to work with Oswald? I don't know if they really want to. I think if they had to, they'd take him out if they can. So I think definitely they don't really want to work with him, but they gotta do what they gotta do, I guess. How is Liza going to approach this Falcone situation? I don't know if she's going to approach it as a love thing or how she's going to approach it exactly, but at this point it seems like she's approaching it as a love, as, you know, sort of like a seduction thing. So I'm wondering what's going to happen there. Fish and Niko working together is definitely very interesting. I'm wondering what's going to happen there as well. And Bruce now has a closer clue. You know, I want to find what else is going on with Mathis. I want to find out more about her character. But that's basically it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode. Thought it was probably the second best episode of the season. I definitely really enjoyed it, except for the whole superpower thing that kind of annoyed me. But I will see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for tonight's episode of The Flash. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.